Just stop expecting me to reach deadlines for this series. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And I've got 3 of these to film today, all of which were going to be my July 10 Years Later videos, before life decided to come in and kick me in the ass. Either way, we're here now, we've got a big one. As you can tell from the title, the album that we'll be talking about today is the 2011 Kendrick Lamar record, Section.80. This was the debut studio album from the legendary Compton rapper Kendrick Lamar, 1/4 of the Black Hippie Collective and one of many under Top Dog Entertainment. Kendrick is someone we all know. He has released classic after classic after classic, releasing some of the most beloved hip-hop albums in recent memory and perhaps some of the greatest albums ever created. In 2011 though, Kendrick was still dropping mixtapes and trying to get his name buzzing a bit. With Section.80, we got to see him playing with a concept, interweaving stories about 2 characters named Tammy and Keisha, and creating a record discussing the modern generation as it was in 2011. The album is 16 tracks and 59 minutes, but this is one of the few records where I didn't really think too much about the length of it before listening. If there's one artist who can make an album of any length appealing, it's probably Kendrick. Further proof of that, on my first run through of this record, I listened to most of it from around 4:30 to 5:30 in the morning, and sometimes when I do that, obviously, I get tired as the album reaches the end. Not here though. I'd honestly say I became more awake as the album went on. Kendrick grabbed me from the start and never let go. Fuck Your Ethnicity kicks us off by bringing us into Tammy and Keisha's stories, discussing racial issues and issues that faced those born in the 80s. As dark as a lot of the lyricism is, there's almost a comforting air to the song thanks to the light piano-driven soulful instrumental. Also helps that near the beginning there's some very lovely singing from the late Alori Joe. Kendrick also rides the beat perfectly with a fast flow and a pretty bouncy filtered hook that rounded out and really grabbed me right from the start. Hole Up sees Kendrick telling the story of how he met and slept with a stewardess while 30,000 feet in the air. There's also quite a few double meanings in it that make it sound like a metaphor for hip-hop as a whole. Kendrick's flow is very focused as the song has another kind of mellow instrumental that feels very airy and lovely. This happens a lot throughout the record, but I like how Kendrick juxtaposes very mature, hard-hitting bars with smooth instrumentation that's just very nice to listen to. ADHD is Kendrick's discussion of drug abuse and what is definitely one of the hardest hitting tracks lyrically. Once again though, his juxtaposing is really interesting. Much of the instrumental is very spacey and ethereal, only occasionally mixing in more banging moments and bigger drums. Combine that with compelling storytelling and you see early and often on here why Kendrick was proving himself to be something special in the music world. No Makeup, Her Vice is the first part of Keisha's story, and on it he talks about how she doesn't need makeup to feel sexy, while also tying into the earlier themes of drug and alcohol abuse. Colin Monroe handles the chorus and I think he brings some very smooth vocals to the table, while Kendrick does a great job trading off bars with Alori Joe. The production matches the darkness of the bars with the drums having more echo and boom to them than on the previous tracks. It sounds great and it makes for a cut that begs for repeat listens. Tammy's song Her Evils was actually the only track I had heard prior to listening to the full album. Simple reason being it's one of the many custom songs I have in Clone Hero. Thanks Asai. Here we meet Tammy and we learn the story of a very unfaithful relationship. I can honestly understand why someone would make a chart of this in Clone Hero because the song has this consistently whooshing synth feeling that almost sounds like it came from a video game. It's honestly one of the most memorable instrumentals on a record full of amazing production. While Kendrick's verses are mostly short, I think he brings some great charisma to them and the hook is extremely catchy as well. Ronald Reagan Era is exactly as the title would suggest, a song that depicts a dystopian Compton affected heavily by the crack epidemic of the 80s, an era of Ronald Reagan's presidency. The song has a suitably darker instrumental with banging drums as Kendrick wears some emotion on his sleeve with his performance. I also love the way the song starts with the late Ash Riser's powerful vocals, and I think Absol's presence adds a bit of extra energy to the track as well. Poe Man's Dreams, His Vice takes a lot of inspiration from writing legend Edgar Allan Poe, who was always known to depict his stories with very realistic and often terrifying imagery. Seriously, read The Cask of Amontillado if you have the chance. That story scared the hell out of me in 9th grade and still does now. Anyway, I once again find myself fascinated by Kendrick's juxtaposing. While the lyrics indicate a lot of recklessness, the instrumental and the hook maintain a very chill vibe and are built off of some simple keys and a light beat. Kendrick nevertheless helps sell the instrumental, and while a lot of his appearance is spoken word, GLC has some good energy with his harder performance. The Spiteful Chant mysteriously is the only track on the album that's not available on Spotify. Seems it may have been removed for reasons related to sample clearances, as it samples Iron by Woodkid. This one definitely took a minute to grow on me though. At first I thought the chorus went on a bit too long and extended the track a little bit. After a few listens though, I was able to to appreciate it more. I also love the celebratory feel of the instrumental, which is probably one of the most bombastic beats on the record. Kendrick sounds great as he raps about people being two-faced and feeling like he's going to make it. And I also love his interplay with his fellow Black hippie member Schoolboy Q, who has a very cutthroat, aggressive performance that I really enjoy. Adding a Lori Joe to the end of the track is a nice touch too. If there's one thing I could say isn't as glowing about this record, it's some of the interlude tracks. You guys know by now I'm not super crazy about short interludes, and while Kendrick would go on to make interludes that were amazing, these ones were just pretty good and not exactly as loopable and re-listenable as some of Kendrick's later ones. Chapter 6, for example, has this beautiful soulful instrumental with some beautiful vocal passages sampled from Hey by We Are King. As it is, while the chorus is solid enough and I like how it continues the skit from the intro track, I just wish it did a little more. The instrumental is too damn good, I just wish it was further expanded upon. Chapter 10 also has a unique instrumental with some interesting electronic production, and Javante has some good vocals too, but Kendrick himself is pretty there and back on the song, which is sad because Kendrick spits on his verse with a very fast flow that was really great. I wish it could have been added onto just a little bit. Those are really only minor blips though, because the rest of what's here is too good. Keisha's song Her Pain continues Keisha's story but also exists as a song for Kendrick's little sister, warning her against becoming a prostitute. Through it, he doesn't demonize prostitution, but he warns his sister that it can be damaging and hurtful, and given that she was 11 at the time that the song was made, he wanted to try to let her know early. Here, the production really leans into the darkness of the tragedy of the story with pounding drums and a dark chorus sung by Ash Ryder. Kendrick's performance is a little more subdued, but it still carries plenty of emotion to it, making this another track that grabs you and doesn't let go. Riga Mortis feels a lot brighter and sunnier than much of what else is here, which is surprising given that it lyrically centers a lot around death. The jazz-leaning production is very airy and joyful, and Kendrick feels like he raps without any real stop. His flow remains as exciting as ever, and the way he rides the beat is perfection. Kush in Corinthians dives into the contradictions between moral actions as well as the temptations of vices. As spacey as the instrumental is, Kendrick plays off of that with his flows going into a slightly more start-stop style with his bars. Usually I don't particularly care for flows like that, but as breathy as his cadence sounds, he actually manages to make it work. I also adore the sing-rapping from BJ the Chicago Kid, and the way the song changes around him, like how it adds a bit of bass groove when he comes in, adds an extra layer that keeps it interesting for the entire 5 minutes. Blow My High Members Only is a tribute to the late R&B legend Aaliyah, sampling her track 4-Page Letter. It's one of the more minimal cuts on the record, adding on a very spacey R&B vibe that Kendrick adds a lot of charisma to, and it's also nice seeing him add some of Aaliyah's vocals to the track too. This is definitely a personal favorite of mine. Absol's outro is Big Surprise, an outro from fellow Black hippie member Mr. Absol himself, who basically serves to clarify a lot of the themes that have come around all throughout this album and give his own perspective on them, largely driving the point that all of what Kendrick said on here is perspective. The instrumental is very busy and jazz influenced, almost sounding like a few tracks that we would go on to hear on To Pimp a Butterfly. Absol sounds hungry and goes extremely hard with his catchy flows that sound like they're always hopping and landing in different ways. Kendrick himself has equally great flows on his verse, and the implementation of Lori Joe is wonderful as well. And the album's lone single, High Power, closes things out, touching on themes of things like self-enlightenment. The song has a slightly more bouncy feel to it, and while Kendrick's flows are a little simpler, they nevertheless twist and turn in a lot of interesting ways, making this a compelling finisher to the album. Overall, talk about having an amazing debut album. Kendrick's 2011 debut still stands as a classic of hip-hop and a great showcase of what's made Kendrick so incredible for so long. We all know he's an amazing technical rapper and that his cadences are constantly compelling, but he also shows a lot of his amazing lyricism with this one. He gets into a lot of very important, often dark and thought-provoking themes and manages to weave them together with an interesting story about Tammy and Keisha. Beyond just having clever bars and writing, Kendrick's storytelling on a track is second to none. As I mentioned several times, he just knows how to pull you in with his performances and keep you listening with his stories. He also brings excellent production all throughout the album with a lot of implementation of soul and jazz, and I like the way that he often juxtaposes light and fun instrumentation with the dark and powerful writing. Round it out with great feature appearances and you've got a stunning debut album. It's easy to see why Kendrick became such a gigantic voice in hip-hop, and you can bet he'd only get better from here. Back in 2011, I was slowly getting into hip-hop, top, but I don't know if I would have been able to appreciate this record. Listening to it now, what a debut album. If I had to put it on my scale, it would definitely get an excellent rating from me. Even now it sounds great, and you can tell while listening that if this was what Kendrick could do on a debut record, the dude was just gonna be a monster in the future, and that he has proven to be. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then, hate it back then? Do you still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? And where would you rank it among Kendrick's other albums? I feel like I know what one you guys are gonna say is the best, but whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And as soon as this goes off, I am going to do my next 10 Years Later video, which is going to be on DJ Khaled's We the Best Forever. That one ought to be fun. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.